It surely is, and that has been Pakistan's complaint for a very long time now. Pakistan has been making all efforts and trying to convince our Afghan friends on the other side of the border that, and especially now that the Taliban are in power, that they need to rein in these elements. Remember, I mean, the kind of war that went on in Afghanistan when the United States was there and how it all ended was based around subconventional kind of a war that these guys were fighting. The TTP became a part of that. The Afghan Taliban, of course, was the primary force there, and so many more groups that emerged there. And there's been a list of about 23 such groups that has been spoken of in the last few days. That is still remnants of it, or mainly some of them in major force, especially the TTP, still resides in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, unfortunately, has given them the space to use this soil for the purpose that all of them or any one of them needs to, especially the TTP against Pakistan. And secondly, I think, and in my judgment, Afghanistan also looks at them as a possible tool for getting more benefit and getting and leveraging their presence for their own benefit in terms of either Afghan interests or Taliban interests in terms of trying to see how much can be done by the neighbors that are going to be affected. Remember, I mean, Turkmenistan, for example, or Tajikistan. I mean, these are the kind of countries that have been affected as much as Pakistan is, if not in that quantum or intensity. Pakistan has been hurt far more, but Pakistan has made all efforts, and unfortunately, it did not cut much, sort of space with the Afghans, and Afghans have tended to hold on to these groups for whatever purpose, and they haven't done anything useful for the Afghan government or the Taliban regime there. And so now the Taliban regime itself is coming into focus in many capitals of the world, and how it is treating its how it is dealing with neighbors and how it's treating its own people, especially the women. And I think that comes out very clearly as a point of concern for everybody. Look, the asymmetric threat has already been, I mean, unleashed, unfortunately, against Pakistan in terms of how the TTP has been used by Afghans, or the TTP has been given the basis by Afghanistan and the permission to use that soil or use their soil to launch attacks against Pakistan and Pakistan's solidarity and integrity. So that has been a concern already, and that is how it has happened in terms of whether they have an air force or not, or whether they have any air power or not. That's not the point. The kind of war that they fight, the kind of battle that they are indulging in, does not need the air power to be unleashed in any shape or form. They're using subconventional methods. They're using terror, which is the primary tool of their application of force against Pakistan, and it has caused a lot of loss of life and other losses to Pakistan. So I don't think there's a need for any air power or air assets to be able to do this kind of a thing. It's not a war in terms of the conventional way, but Pakistan as a more regular state with a more regular military, unfortunately, when must deal with such threats, then despite telling the Afghans again and again that they got to put a leash on these groups, especially like the TTP, if they are unable to control them, they can't manage to put whatever leash on them, then Pakistan will use whatever is available to it to nip the evil in the bud from where it starts and where it is located, which means bases across sometime. It means bases across the border also. So I think that is how Pakistan looks at it, and we are not targeting the Taliban, the Afghan people. We're not attacking anything which is related to the Taliban regime or the Afghan people. We are only targeting those, or we have just sporadically targeted those who attack Pakistan, and these are TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is being housed currently or is located in Afghanistan. Anyway, I mean, a threat there, if they are scared of ISIS, I mean, how do they know that the people who are now fighting as TTP against Pakistan are not also fighting along with ISIS in other areas? I mean, this is a franchise. This is a terror franchise. This is a criminal franchise, and these are people, ready to do whatever to, do anything for the highest bidder. So, in this area of using groups, I mean, they're not ideologically driven. They're driven by money alone. So they are available to anyone who pays them and gets them to do whatever they want them to do for them, and in return for that money. So I think Afghanistan, the Taliban would be at fault and would be wrong in trying to justify by saying that we are scared that they might go to ISIS. They don't even know if ISIS actually consists and the TTP consists of the same people. They could be moving from one place to the other. I mean, that's the unfortunate part of these franchises, terror franchises. So I think Afghanistan and the Taliban regime would be in a great error in case they think that that is a good enough reason for them to not sort of put them in check. All right, we got to remember that war or conflict, I mean, it's a conflict, it's not a war. We have had skirmishes, but call it war. And I'm talking about principle now. War is an extension of policy. So, whatever is the political process, war is a part of it. If the political process fails, war happens. So, or for that matter, if war happens, war creates a space for a political process. So, this is a continuum. This is a link. So, if a skirmish has happened, we have had a short sort of a conflict with each other, that may have created more space for the negotiation to happen, for the politics to follow. So that is the purpose of whenever you apply the military instrument. Military instrument is not a finality. It creates space for a political process. So that political process in the form of diplomatic engagement, in terms of political engagement, will have to come in to benefit from whatever Pakistani military or the use of the Pakistani military forces has been able to gain from this little skirmish with Afghanistan. The same was true for when Pakistan fought with India. I mean, there was this space. Unfortunately, we could not follow it up in that way. But yes, we leveraged that in different ways in terms of how Pakistan began to be given more or recognized more for international diplomacy, and you've seen the results of it happening. But yes, so war is not something that will stop you from engaging. Sometimes war is necessary to create more space. And I think in terms of the the difference in terms of the capacities that you see on the Afghan Pakistan side, Pakistan has been able to generate that impact and hopefully perhaps give a message to the Afghans as well that it's time now for them to sit down with Pakistan, work on finding solutions together, and create space for diplomatic and political engagement. Yeah, but it's not a continuous fence anyway. I mean, we know vehicles get smuggled into Pakistan from Afghanistan. There's a lot more that happens between the two between the two countries. There's a lot of movement of people between the two countries. Things are better. So whenever that happens, there's always a possibility that the nefarious elements too will find an opportunity to seep in. Again, like I said, there are gaps, and there are huge gaps in how the fencing has had to be left out. Yes, perhaps a better technical electronic surveillance system is something that perhaps will be useful if it is possible to keep it, that pervasive in that areas or the regions that are not covered. But I mean, remember the easement of facilitation rights that the tribal people have, which Pakistan is a signatory to. That easement of facilitation has always, for the last, I don't know how is it now, but it has always enabled the people from both sides across the border on both sides to visit each other because the families they share the spaces on either side, the villages that are located on either side. So in that sort of a situation, it's very difficult to really put a finite border and say, okay, although Pakistani state has done very well in terms of moving in that direction, and perhaps we need to be little more sort of reinforce the same process, whereby we make sure that anyone entering or exiting Pakistan is in the knowledge of the state of Pakistan, and the government of Pakistan, so that we know who's entering and whether whether we like that person to enter Pakistan or not. So that control over the movement of people must be more solidified, needs to be made more concrete, and whatever is required in these times and days. Fortunately, I mean, unfortunately, had Afghanistan settled into a more stable state after the U.S. departure from there, and had the Taliban regime uh, permitted itself a little more sort of controlled or directed governance policy, or something in those lines, whereby the Afghan state would have become more stable, the relationship would have perhaps also stabilized considerably, because Afghanistan is so much dependent on Pakistan for their transport trade and for the transnational access that they need in terms of so all those things are there. Pakistan continues to support those, but I think the Afghan nation, Afghan state, has not been able to establish itself on more sound lines, and that has been a missing link. Why the two states have not been able to to have a more congenial, cordial atmosphere between them. Look, the point is that I think the Afghan government or the Taliban regime is currently recognized by just a few, and Pakistan is one of them. India perhaps is going to follow soon, and Russia probably has done or wants to do the same, and perhaps Saudi Arabia. I mean, so there are very few countries in the world that recognize the Taliban regime or Afghan government. So when you look at that, there is very little in terms of the space that they have available to them, and so when so few countries they are in contact with them, then I think their dependence on these countries is also very essential. Some of them, for example, India, may like to use Afghanistan differently against Pakistan, or you may like to establish a different way of influencing the Afghans or the Taliban regime there. The Russians and the Saudis and the Pakistanis may have a different way of looking at it, especially Pakistan, because of the fact that, as you mentioned, we have hot borders on both sides, and we don't want a two-front situation for us. But I doubt that the Taliban, I don't know. I mean, I hope they are more sort of well directed in terms of how they look at the region, how they look at the stability of the region, and they are not they don't offer their services to anyone who wants to create more difficulties for the state of Pakistan. I'm talking about India, which is very interested in getting into Afghanistan now, recognizing it and setting its bases there again. So that has been the problem for us for a long time. It's likely it will continue to be a problem. And so therefore the diplomatic influence is more the choice of the Afghans than that of Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan can't push them. The choice will have to be made by the Taliban themselves. Kabul, it is using Kabul or not, I am not sure of that, and that will be a big statement for me to make. But I can tell you this thing, that yes, I mean, the Afghan as an independent individual, independent people have the right to establish relations with anyone that they feel is good in their or is in their interest, and India being one of them. So it's perfectly fine if they want to do that. But for them to know that India is going to use this influence or effect of their presence and of their relationship with the Taliban to the detriment of Pakistan is something that if the Taliban shut their eyes to it, then they are becoming accomplices or partners to that crime, as far as if it so happens against Pakistan. But otherwise, I feel that yeah, I mean, so Pakistan will have to uh, face off whatever comes across it, whether it's Indian footprint, whether it is Indian design, or whether it is the Afghan sort of tolerance of how the other people or groups use their soil against Pakistan. I think Pakistan has a threat from terrorism emanating out of Afghanistan. So that is our threat. We don't have a threat from Afghanistan per se, but from the Afghan soil. The groups located on the Afghan soil who are targeting or which are targeting Pakistan or Pakistani integrity or the state of Pakistan. That is our threat. So as long as we are focusing and remaining confined to that threat, whether it is this side of the border or across the border, either side of the border, Pakistani state has a responsibility to engage the threat that creates difficulties for the people and for the state of Pakistan. So that should be, as long as that is the limit and that is the space that we want to sort of stay active and kinetically engaged, that is perfectly fine. I don't think we have an interest to, in any manner, in any way, try and find more space in Afghanistan for any other purpose. We don't want Afghanistan to do our bidding for anywhere, in any sense. We are not like India who are going to perhaps find bases there and use that soil or the capacity there or build that capacity to hold nefarious designs against any other country. Pakistan has a very fine relationship with all the neighbors of Afghanistan, absolutely all neighbors of Afghanistan, and it is the only neighbor of Afghanistan which is suffering from Afghan laxity of either the state or the complicity of the state in terms of letting the groups that threaten Pakistan stay and act from there. And for that matter, if anything that in future emerges from India or any other state that comes and aims or targets Pakistan, that will become a threat to Pakistan. But Pakistan has to face a threat. And like I said, either this side or this side of the border, and Pakistan will exercise its right to do that.